Hello and welcome to the Political Dispatch, the podcast that explores big issues and ideas in a conversational way.
My name is Lily Mott.
I'm Sid Kuripati.
And I'm Tom Spare.
So, in today's episode, we're taking a deep dive into US politics, specifically what life is like in the United States now that Trump is back in office. We've covered US politics and Trump's influence before on this podcast, but today we have two special guests who can share first-hand experiences about what it's like to be living in the United States right now.
Yes, we are thrilled to be joined today by Amelia Southern Uribe and Bryson Austin, among many other things, and they'll introduce themselves in just a moment. They are two of the newest members of Be the Change Media Network. They'll soon be launching their own podcast, The Ozark Agenda, which is an anti-capitalist and pro-people podcast where the global fight against fascism meets Ozark resistance. And that is just the description that you guys have. I'm sure you'll tell us more about the podcast and what everyone can look forward to in just a bit.
Amelia and Bryson, welcome to the Political Dispatch. We're really looking forward to this conversation. Before we get started, could you both introduce yourselves to our listeners? The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Hi, y'all. My name is Amelia Southern Uribe, and more than anything, I'm grateful to be in this conversation with y'all and in such a defining moment in history, and not just US history, global history. I call myself a climate justice organizer and now a podcaster. My work is about preserving and empowering the voices of Black and Brown US Southerners in our communities in the fight for environmental justice and challenging the systems that have long exploited us and our land. From the local level to international advocacy, I'm organizing to stop the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure and protect our communities for healthy air, clean water, and just the right to exist. So I'm excited to bring those perspectives to the Ozark Agenda, a podcast about the realities of the oppression and the power of resistance in the US South. And thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. As Lily and Tom said, my name is Bryson Austin, and I identify as a person who believes in democracy and the oversight of the federal court system. I know that sounds weird and nerdy to say as an intro, but in the 21st century, it feels like we have to make civic education and engagement cool. I am co-podcaster with Amelia on the Ozark Agenda, and it is an extension of my work as the diversity and inclusion director at the University of Arkansas for our associated student government. My work is in uplifting historically disenfranchised groups and making sure that capitalism is corrected to help the people that it's hurt and hopefully gotten rid of. And yeah, thank you for having us again.
Thank you so much for coming. We are so excited to have you here. And I think we'll get started with a very big, broad question. But as students and following the arrests of student activists in other parts of the country, and just also as people living in the US right now, what is it like living in the US? What is it like on your campus? Are there any noticeable shifts in discourse, in activism? Tell me just about the current moment and what you guys are living through right now in the US.
Well, I kind of want to frame the moment here that, Bryson and I are both campus organizers, student organizers, and seniors at the University of Arkansas. But it's not just about the University of Arkansas. It's not just about Brown University or Columbia University headlines that you've probably seen. But the political climate on our campus right now and campuses across the US is a reflection of the larger struggles happening across the country, but also across the world. Battleground between those who want to preserve the status quo of, let's just say it, political violence, and also those of us that are fighting for something and something kind of beautiful, global solidarity and liberation. And the arrests of student activists, the repression of protest, and I think attempts to silence us as students is not new, but it is scary. It is scary. And I think that history shows us that when young people organize, when we name the systems that exploit us, when we confront them, those in power respond with fear. And I think that's what's just happening now. And fear breeds repression. And I just wanted to state that this overwhelming fear and shock and where we are as a country is not new, but it is exaggerated. And especially living in the US South, living in Arkansas, they tried Project 2025 out on us. We were Trump's America before it was a federal thing. And I think that's something that we've been fighting generationally, but especially for the last 10 years, there's been a difference. And it only makes organizing harder. But I think what I try to embody is that this repression doesn't mean that we have to retreat. It does not mean that we have to leave our organizing. It does not mean that we have to leave our communities to fend for themselves. It's something that we're close to and something that they don't want us to tap into. And that's the power of each other. And that's the power of solidarity. And I think I see that shift happening, that students are waking up to the reality that neutrality is a myth. Neutrality only means that you side with the oppressor, that you side with Donald Trump, that you side with Elon Musk. And that silence is oppressive. And I feel that overwhelmingly on this campus. And I felt it for many years since I stepped on this campus. I mean, we live in a red state, in a blue bubble, but that doesn't protect us from the realities of this moment in time or the moments leading up to it. And so I think now that people are questioning the institutions around them and the deep betrayal and the harm that has been done, more than ever, I see people getting engaged. And that was a shock that this repression is also breeding like some community. These organizing groups, my organizing group we're seeing the most turnout in numbers, most consistent turnout, and people are just ready. They're ready to do something. They're ready to take action. Students are organizing, they're showing up, they're calling out the contradictions. We're building coalitions. And I think the question isn't about if there's a shift, but the question is, will we see the courage? Will we see consistent courage to see it through? I think that's been said movements before, that your silence will not protect you, or that solidarity is not a slogan. But all of this, our community, is actually necessity. It's a strategy. And I think the campus climate is changing, but I think that change is necessary.
Yeah, I hope you're right on that, Amelia. I hope that people are changing. In terms of political climate on campus, we don't have one. I tend to think that this is a truly apathetic campus before it is a conservative one, but it is conservative second. And kind of the shift in discourse, I'm not really seeing it outside of the frontline communities. Amelia and I Amelia used to be, but I'm still currently a part of the student government. And what I see in the student government is true apathy. And it's a lot of unaffected people who don't see themselves playing a role in this time in history. And they were never taught and never learned about the power of student governments and the role that student governments have played in movements past, in every war that we've had that's been unjustified, which has been most of them. But the apathy it has been getting to me because we are living in unprecedented times, and that means that we need to act in unprecedented ways. We need to begin to organize and to come together as a community that sees itself on the front lines. When Mahmoud Khalid was arrested, I think it was a moment that sent shivers down my spine in a way that I had not seen previously. And I was having a conversation with a friend recently that said, fascism isn't coming, fascism is here. And that was, it was kind of it made me reframe that arrest, that someone who had done what the conservatives call immigrating the right way, right, was summarily, illegally arrested for exercising his right to free speech. I grew up learning the Constitution, learning the rights that we fought for, that our founding fathers fought for, and then that civil rights leaders fought for the next couple of centuries to get us where we are in defending our right to speech, to press, and organizing. And arresting someone using a law that was written before people of color could vote and before people from the Asian continent were even allowed to come to the United States. It is emblematic of the persistent rot within our system. To say we still have a democracy, I think, is not completely fair. but we have to fight against the backsliding that we are doing and against people taking our rights away right now. And one of the biggest shifts I'm seeing, like Amelia said, is that I think that people are waking up, albeit too slowly. And I would like it to accelerate, but hopefully we can be a part of that acceleration.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing, I think these like repressive movements that Bryson was talking about with Muhammad Khalil is that we have students already, international students that are predominantly taking up leadership roles and decision-making roles in space in our organizing spaces, particularly with Students for Justice in Palestine. People are scared. We know that we're being surveilled. Our University of Arkansas is already under investigation by the Department of Education. We're one of 60 universities in the United States, and we're scared. And I think that's why people are, coming up. But I think that's important to know too, is that like what Columbia is with the deportations, or with Brown University deporting professors, we live in a largely immigrant community. My family came to the United States, and to be in this moment right now and to know that to deport a US resident, to deport someone in the community and to label them as a terrorist, the only thing that they are really afraid of, and I think when we use terrorists, we say an enemy of the state, but that means the enemy of the status quo. And I think that's so important to say too, is that anyone that's an organizer on a campus right now that challenges and cannot throw down with the genocide in Gaza, cannot throw down with the acceleration of climate change, cannot throw down with the mass deportations, you're now an enemy of the state. And that to me is very rampant in my mind. And to know that what Bryson said is very true. We see growth and we see the shift, but at a concerningly slow rate. But for Arkansas, this is a shift that's needed and a shift that is necessary. But it's, how do we hold each other? How do we embrace each other? And how do we challenge the status quo, knowing that they have already tried to turn us on each other? Just in our neighboring state above us, Missouri, they're offering $1,000 reward to turn in undocumented immigrants. I want to sit with that for a second. They're offering financial incentives to turn on each other when the economy is already so bad and it's tanking. And I think that's important too, is that all we have right now on this campus, and to be in a college town, is to be a member of the campus and to be the member of a community. But this shift requires us to be there for each other, to protect each other, because inevitably there will be consequences when you're an enemy of the state, when you're an enemy of the status quo. And I think that's important to say too, is that what we used to reward in this activist behavior, in being someone politically involved, there are less rewards and more risk now than ever. So I just wanted to add that on.
Right. Could I have just a couple of questions? Could you explain what student government is? Because in the UK, we have students' unions, so that's where I started my career. Could you explain a bit about that? But also, could you talk a little bit about the demographics in the university? What sort of student groups have you got? Is it a lot of locals? Is it a lot of international students? What's the sort of mix there?
Yeah, so I would say at the University of Arkansas, student government is a lot more about pageantry than it is about policy. Our job is to represent students and to push their interests at the university. But I think a lot of what we do is pomp and circumstance. So we have a lot of programming. We hand out cookies to students, and I think that is key in helping students belong and feel like they belong. But what we miss is the true representation that I think comes with being a student government. And what I mean by that is the university has interests that are directly opposed to student interests, and we do not do enough to call them out Instead, we cozy up to them so that they can be more receptive of our demands, I guess. But then we don't make those demands. Our demographics, we are a PWI, a predominantly white institution in the Southeastern Conference of the United States. So that's the colleges below the Mason-Dixon line. And I would say the makeup of our campus, correct me if I'm wrong, Amelia, is about 85% plus. It's probably 90% white, and our student government is about the same. And yeah, it's a lot of people who come from backgrounds where they never experienced oppression and don't know what it's like to stand up to authority because they have been taught to bow down to authority and to never break rules because that's a very bad thing. And then in terms of our student groups on campus, we have a lot of national organizations that are part of our RSOs and a lot of local nonprofits, but most of our student groups are student-led and student-started. And so they interface with us by requesting funding through our Office of Financial Affairs. And in terms of our international students, I think we have between 2,000 to 3,000 international students, and we don't take care of them as we should. And I'm sure that they are very intimidated by what's happening right now. So I would love if our student government were to step in and step up to the plate and say that we're going to defend our international students.
Thank you for explaining. What sort of specific policies or executive actions from Trump's new administration have had the most immediate impact on your life or the lives of those around you, would you say?
I think, what comes to mind first is there's many executive actions that I think are affecting us right now. But something that is close to me, close to my family, and close to my community is the rhetoric and the executive orders around immigration. And especially, oh, don't get emotional. I grew up in the US, and I've lived now through 2 Trump presidencies. But I remember in 2016 when he got elected, or I guess, November of 2015, that was an incredibly difficult time for my family. My mom wasn't a citizen at that point, and there is so much fear that comes with trying to navigate through life, navigate through employment, navigate through the community, and know that this area is one that wants you gone. Flash forward to 2025, he's in office, and I'm now 21 and still scared. And I think that's definitely intentional. And to say, it's absolutely a privilege. My mom did become naturalized, but that's not the privilege of many of my friends and community members. Some of my best friends are on DACA. Some of my best friends are undocumented. And it's a secret that we have to hold, that we are expected to reside in fear. And as I got older, I got increasingly more active in the immigrant right organizing space. And we had been planning November to January. This is what we're going to do. This is our plans. And day by day, it felt as though they had studied a playbook and took away any autonomy that we might have, not just as organizers, not just as community members, but as people. I remember when they took away sanctuary spaces, and to clarify what that means, it's where ICE, immigration, customs enforcement can't go in, or was not able to up until this year, go into churches, schools, places of worship, and beyond to detain you. When that executive order went through, that there was no more sanctuary spaces, it busted through our whole plan, through our whole playbook to protect each other. And especially, I mentioned earlier the financial incentives to turn people in, the quotas that ICE has, the ability, even in Springdale, 15 minutes down the road, even that, ICE officers are masked. There is shame. They feel this shame about taking our neighbors, our classmates, our friends, our community members, and throwing them into vans. And I think that's just something that like, it's not even hurt. It's not even sadness. It is this deep rooted anger and betrayal to know that people are literally being ripped out of their homes. We, as a community, I mean, are documenting this, but the area that we live in, Northwest Arkansas, has attracted so many Latino communities, undocumented communities, Marshallese communities because of the corporations where we live. We live in, we call it the Big Three. Tyson, one of America's largest poultry, big agricultural companies, is from Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas. Walmart is from Northwest Arkansas. JB Hunt, one of the largest supply chain and trucking companies in the US, is from Arkansas. Tyson is in Arkansas, brings a lot of undocumented labor into the area. And so it just feels as though, and this was reiterated during COVID as well, undocumented Latinos and Marshallese community members that worked in the factories had to go into the factories at midnight, work 12-hour shifts during COVID, during the peak of COVID, or they risked their job security. Multiple immigrants died because of this illness. And now fast forward back to 2025, we still rely on Tyson as a country to eat our chicken, to get our poultry products. And at the same time, we're deporting our members of the community that we so heavily rely on, and not to reduce our community, not to reduce us down to labor, but more so the hypocrisy that I see in this community and from a community that voted in Donald Trump into office and actively supporting this movement to tear families apart, to tear communities apart. It's unbelievable. It's sick. It's actually sick. And I think why I say all of this is that this community has been built on this love, on this labor, and we have been so tied to each other to protect each other. And I think that we're doing that to an extent, but it is almost desensitizing to see so many families ripped apart and to be taken from their doors, to be taken from their schools, to be a part of that community, and to just see it's so, I don't even know how to describe how the fear that I live in, even now, just like presenting as a citizen, knowing that they're deporting residents, that they have made movements to detain citizens as well. And it's now more than ever, I'm aware of my mother's accent and I'm aware of her brown skin. I'm aware of how she moves through this world, and the fear is there. The university already is blocking words from immigrants, Latinx, community organizer, and our daily news. That, I want to sit with that for a second too. We're already blocking identities, not just ripping them from their houses. We're erasing them from history right now at a higher education administration level. And I just say all that to say that these executive orders, it's too much to track, it's too much to feel. But when you live in a largely immigrant community, when you live in a largely brown community, a largely low income community, but also live near billionaires, you can't help but see the hypocrisy. And it's just unbelievable. But Bryson, I'll pass it to you.
I think that the most immediate effects for me have been the diversity, equity, and inclusion executive orders that have come through. The Trump administration has come in and basically said that diversity, equity, and inclusion is, I guess, racist against white people, and so it no longer can be enforced. And what that means for us directly is that our state legislature actually just came through and said and passed a bill that says that if the university allows students in their colleges to meet certain accreditation requirements from accrediting agencies that often have diversity requirements, then they lose state funding. And right now, university is under investigation. It's one of the 60 universities in the country that are under investigation for diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. And so at first it might seem kind of innocuous, get rid of your diversity fairs, stop having certain events. But what we've seen already is that the retribution has started immediately. Johns Hopkins has already lost $800 million in funding, and they're having to fire 2,000 people. Columbia lost $400 million for their protests when they are expelling, suspending, and not allowing the validity of degrees to go through for people who participated in those protests. So it's really about fear, like Amelia said. And what they are really saying is, we don't like people of color. We don't want to see you. We don't want to hear from you. And Amelia actually sent an article out on their Instagram recently talking about white supremacy culture, and it breaks down what is included. And to me, it helped identify what is being pushed on us. So individualism, defensiveness or denial, worship of the written word, paternalism, fear of open conflict. That's what it is. They don't want to talk about the history of this nation. And the truth of diversity, equity, and inclusion practices is the Civil Rights Act had to be enforced by corporations, by the government, by schools. And a big way that white people intended on enforcing the Civil Rights Act was DEI. And I was listening to an academic recently, Elie Mystal, on the Strict Scrutiny podcast, and he has written a new book about kind of the 10 laws that he would get rid of to instantly make life in America better. And one of the things that he said is this was the way that they intended on enforcing the Civil Rights Act. Once we get rid of DEI, the only thing left to do is directly challenge the Civil Rights Act. And we've already challenged the Voting Rights Act that has seen states in the South who have a history of racism and continue to have a present of racism. They are no longer under the watchful eye of the federal government. They're getting rid of the Department of Education. And the target is people of color. The target is those who historically have been the underclass. And they don't care if in that kind of work, they hurt their own people. Because one of the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action and of diversity, equity, inclusion has been white women too. There's a huge thing that we forget, is that we are protecting people and putting together laws that protect people from discrimination. Those laws permeated through the community. It's why we got access for South Asian people to be able to come into the United States. It's why LGBTQ people have been protected historically. And so this attack on DEI and these executive orders that are coming down to essentially say, we no longer value you, that's had the most immediate impact on me. Lloyd Austin, our former Secretary of Defense under President Joe Biden, is a war criminal. He worked for Raytheon. He's a terrible guy. He was preeminently qualified for his position. He had been over CENTCOM, the Central Command of the United States. He was a 4-star general, just a really qualified guy. They replaced him with Peter Hegseth, a serial drunk, sexual assault perpetrator, and just a horrible husband, a horrible guy overall, whose only qualification was that he kissed Donald Trump's butt enough on Fox News, and now he's our defense secretary. Then he got rid of our chairman of the Joint Chief because he was a black guy. And now the man that they replaced him with was so unqualified that he had to get a waiver just to fill that position. But the new DEI is, are you right-wing enough? Have you kissed the ring enough? Are you a big fan of Elon Musk? Are you a big fan, and will you bend the knee to Donald Trump? So they're just really replacing a fair, if you want to say, DEI with one for the neo-Nazis and fascists that are rising in this country.
That was, it kind of gives you like the real picture of what they're doing, which is not really reported in the media. And it makes you, like Amelia said, it makes you pause. It makes you think as to what's really going on. It's in the in-between sections in the page nines and the page tens is where, the real change is actually happening, which, of course, we tend to miss out on. But just a quick follow-up, really quick follow-up. The birthright citizenship executive action has been challenged in the courts, right? There are other actions similarly which have been challenged in the courts as well. And as a Democrat and a believer of the federal court system, do you think that other such immigration-based executive actions are going to be struck down by, say, a federal circuit court, or God forbid it goes to federal Supreme Court because you got a 5-3 right now, right? And that's probably the political move that they're trying to do because all indications point towards that. And once they rule on it, it's not going to make any difference,
Yeah,
right?
so my friends will read, they love fiction books, and I can't do fiction. My version of, read a good time reading is court decisions. And so I love to follow the courts. I watched Strict Scrutiny, which is a podcast just on the Supreme Court, the courts in the United States, and culture. And what I will say is that I have never been more impressed with our federal judiciary than right now. I've also never seen a president piss off so many judges in the way that he has. Like, judges who are usually, even keeled and even tempered, they're angry at this administration for flagrantly disregarding anything that judges will say. And so what I will say is, yes, I think that these cases will continue to come down on our side, and judges will say, no, that is illegal. That is unconstitutional. We just had the dismantling of USAID declared unconstitutional. A little late, but I mean that's how our judicial system is supposed to work. But it all depends on whether or not this president wants to follow the rulings of the judiciary. Because what Trump has taught us is that our norms mean nothing. And throughout my life, I have always known presidents to follow, and presidents and people elected or appointed by the president to follow the rulings of the court. But we have to go back to when Thomas Jefferson decided that he didn't want to listen to the courts. And he told the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, you can enforce this, you and what army? So that's where we are, is the open fascist going to follow the rulings of these courts? And recently, when a judge said that they had to stop the deportations of these alleged Tren de Aragua members, they didn't listen. And at first they said, well, the planes were over international water, so we couldn't turn them around, which then begs the question, so who has jurisdiction over the water? So the president can just fly anybody over international waters and then he can do whatever he wants with them. And then they said, well, it was an oral order. You said that verbally, but you didn't write it down. So basically, we didn't have to cooperate at that point. So I do have faith in our judiciary. They're going to do the right thing because these things are unconstitutional. But I don't know if he's going to follow them. And specifically with the 14th Amendment, I'm going to say this quickly and then I'll shut up. That amendment was written because of my people. We fought for that. We got that because they didn't want to give us citizenship because our parents and grandparents were slaves. Now that law has been used to protect the underclass and has been used to protect immigrants. Because if you can see with the gold card that he's trying to sell to foreign people, they want to make citizenship a class thing. I would not be surprised if the ultimate goal of getting rid of the 14th Amendment is to be able to sell citizenship. And if you can't buy it, then you're not a citizen. You aren't protected by US laws, and you can be deported if you do something wrong, even if you were born here. Again, the courts will strike it down, but what it's going to take for this to stop is people mobilizing and showing the president who's boss, because it's not him, it's the people who elected him.
I just wanted to add something really, really quickly that birthright citizenship isn't just about legal technicalities, and I think Bryson did a really good job of highlighting that. I wanted to also just put it and name it out there that this is systematic oppression that disproportionately impacts women of color and immigrant mothers. It is written in there. It is not just about, who can be here, but more so it's creating a new class and dismantling those rights, basic protections and rights. So it's just wanted to clarify that too.
Hello everyone, it's Lily jumping in here, and I am so sorry to stop the episode there, but we will be continuing this conversation in a part 2 episode, which will be released next week on March 28th. So tune in for that episode, and I'm going to toss it back over to Tom, who will be sharing our good news story segment for this week.
Yeah, so before we wrap up, we're trying to get in the habit of ending these episodes on a positive note. So today is the 21st of March, and it's the World Poetry Day, a celebration of the power of words and artistic expression.
Established by UNESCO in 1999, this day highlights poetry's role in preserving culture, sparking conversation, and inspiring change. Around the world, people are marking the occasion with public readings, poetry slams, and creative writing workshops, encouraging everyone to engage with poetry in new and meaningful ways.
Whether you take a moment to read a favorite poem, write one of your own, or simply appreciate the beauty of language, today is a reminder of poetry's enduring ability to connect us all. And I also want to say, again, this is a wonderful way to connect. If you find community in poetry slams, if you enjoy going to public readings, this is a great way to do it. Create. That's a great way of being the light and being the change. So just wanted to throw that in there.
As it is World Poetry Day, I thought I'd read a poem. This poem was actually at the top of my landing in my house where I grew up. And every time I would go upstairs, I'd always look at this poem. I hope you enjoy.
Desiderata by Max Ehrmann. Go placidly amidst the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your career, however humble. It's a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive them to be, and whatever your labours and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life. Keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it's still a beautiful world. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy.
So that's Desiderata by Max Ehrmann. Hopefully it resonated with you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of The Political Dispatch with our special guests, Amelia and Bryson. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode. Please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating or a comment wherever you're listening. Tune in for part 2 of our conversation next week. Bye for now.